Hey everyone, you're listening to the Health and Wellbeing podcast. I'm Alison Mitchell, a practicing naturopath, and you can find me on naturopathnSW.com.au. Hi Laura, thanks for joining us. How'd you sleep last night?
I slept quite well actually, I think, which I don't have any problems with sleep, so I'm pretty lucky in general.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I slept pretty well as well, and I think I'm doing pretty well to be continuing to sleep well at this stage of the pregnancy as well. I just find that I have to have that pillow between my knees, and then I'm usually all good.
Awesome. No, yeah, get as much of it as you can now.
Yeah, I know. So, as everyone knows, we're going to be talking about sleep and insomnia today. And I think this is a pretty important topic because sleep is one of those fundamental, important things that you need to get right to fix the rest of your health. So when it comes to looking at any sort of condition, the main staples that you need to address is your diet, your stress levels, and your sleep, and your exercise as well. So for sleep, we know that in Australia about 13 to 33% of adults have regular difficulty in either getting to sleep or staying asleep. I know in New South Wales alone, almost 1/5 of the population are chronically sleep restricted. And in a lot of the people who are actually going to any health practitioners, about 50% of people with depression also have insomnia. And depression and insomnia, respectively, are the first and the third most common reasons why people seek help for any sort of mental health disorder. So issues that can be involved in difficulty sleeping can be difficulty falling asleep at a bedtime that allows you to get your good 8 hours sleep. It can be waking up throughout the night and not being able to get back to sleep. It can be being restless or wakeful throughout the night. Waking up just once to go to the bathroom isn't really an issue. It's unless you have trouble getting back to sleep after that. And when we're looking at the definition of insomnia, it also has to be that it will affect your day afterwards, and you have to have had these symptoms for at least 4 weeks as well to actually have it classed as insomnia. Also, in general, our sleep hours are reducing. So in the 1960s, our average sleep time was about 8.5 hours per night, and now it's about 6.5 hours per night, and it was slightly longer on weekends when people were playing catch up. But the recommendation now is for everyone to have about 7 to 8 hours, and that's more if you're a teenager or a child.
Yeah, for sure. I can't function properly unless I have 8 hours sleep.
Yeah, I need it quite a lot as well.
Yeah.
But oversleeping isn't good for you either.
Absolutely. And the symptoms or the bad effects of oversleeping can be the same as the effects of undersleeping. So you've got to get the balance right.
Yeah, that's right. And so what a lot of people don't know is that when we're actually asleep, that we are going through certain stages of that sleep cycle as well.
Yes. So the main two different phases are the REM, which most people have heard about because of the band, and the NREM. So the REM is the rapid eye movement sleep, and this starts about 90 minutes into your sleep. And these two phases kind of cycle throughout the night. So 90 minutes after you've fallen asleep, you usually hit your REM, and during your REM sleep, that's when you're dreaming, usually doing your main dreaming. Usually in the REM sleep, your body gets paralysed so that you're not acting out your dreams. So this is real full-on sleep. And it's thought that, when we're having our rapid eye movement sleep and our dream sleep, that's where we're processing events of the day or repressed memories and getting, I guess, our psychological work done. So it's really important for our brain function and our moods to get the REM sleep happening. And so the first time we go into REM sleep, it lasts about 10 minutes, and then each cycle of REM throughout the night gets a little bit longer, and the longest phase is an hour or up to an hour, and that happens about 30 minutes before we wake up in the morning. The other stage of sleep is the NREM, and the NREM is broken into 3 different stages. It used to be 4 stages of NREM, and now they've decided to recategorize it into 3 stages. So it gets a little bit complicated when you're thinking about the 4 stages of NREM, but that's the first sleep that we go into. So the first bit of NREM is your light sleep. So if you're in your light sleep, you might wake up and think you haven't been to sleep yet. So people who say, I didn't sleep all night, a lot of the time they're actually in that first stage of NREM where they're kind of dozing. And then that gets deeper and deeper. And so the deep NREM sleep is when your brain waves actually slow down. And so the energy of the body is on healing. So the energy use slows down. In the day, we're using our energy a lot. At night time, it's all about repair. So the deep stage of NREM sleep, the brain waves are nice and slow. There might be some dreaming happening, but it's mostly about growth and repair of the body. So we really need this. Most of the body's repairing happens when we're asleep. So we need this deep phase of sleep for our bodies to heal and stay well. So that's the stages.
Yeah.
And I think I don't want to get too deep into it because it just gets a bit confusing. But that's it in a nutshell.
But essentially what people can understand from that is that that hour before, like an hour before midnight, is worth 2 hours after, and that's because that first half is that deep stage 3. And
Yes.
that's where all the restoration and the detoxification happens.
Yeah.
So sleep's pretty important.
Oh, so important.
Yeah.
So I've had a long fascination and love affair with sleep. My first assignment at Naturopathic College was on sleep because that's just...
There you go.
Yeah.
We used to think that in sleep our body and our brain would just sort of like quiet down, and essentially it was just like a relaxation period, or like taking a break. But now we know that there's actually so much important functions that are occurring during sleep, and so some of those are actually happening more actively than they are during the day, like for instance our detoxification system as well. So it's how deeply you sleep that's really important, because if you get a really long period of sleep and it's really quite light, then it's still not going to be as good for you as if you actually did get a much more efficient period of sleep.
Absolutely. So say 4 hours of really deep sleep is better than 7 hours of light broken sleep.
Yeah. I haven't looked too much into it, but there is some talk about how biphasic sleep is meant to be okay as well, where people actually get the 2 periods of sleep. Do you know about that?
I've just read a little bit more recently where they think that back in the olden days that was the way people slept, that they'd wake up in the middle of the night, like they'd sleep for 4 hours, wake up, have a little snack or read or do something quiet, and then go back to sleep for 4 hours, which I find really interesting.
Maybe stoke the fire.
Warm things up again and then go back to sleep.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
So I guess if you do wake up in the middle of the night and your mind is racing, then do the thing that you need to do and then go back to sleep.
Yeah, don't panic. I think the worst thing people can do is panic and panic about being awake. Sometimes you just got to go with the flow.
Yeah. So, but obviously we don't want to be sleep deprived because that's really, really bad for us.
Yes.
So I know that, like, for instance, most people can cope with the occasional bad night of sleep, but it's when it starts to accumulate, that's when it really starts to affect your health. Yeah. So we know that sleep deprivation is a risk factor for obesity, which can increase your risk of obesity by up to 55%. And one of the studies that looked at this found that people who get too much sleep are also more likely to be overweight. So again, you want to aim for that 8 hours. And one of the mechanisms it's still not completely understood how it actually does affect our weight, but one of the mechanisms is how it affects the hormones leptin and ghrelin, which are responsible for our appetite and our satiety as well.
I think also if you're not getting the good quality sleep, your adrenals aren't repairing. Yep. So that's probably another aspect of why the weight might get impacted.
Yeah. Definitely.
And I remember when I was really into the sleep when I was a bit younger, I remember reading studies about rat studies where they had deprived the rats of sleep. I guess they're necessary sometimes, animal studies, but so these rats that had been deprived of sleep, their white blood cells would reduce, which means their immune systems would not be firing well. Their body temperature would decrease, and eventually, if they were continuously deprived of sleep, they would die. So you will die if you don't have sleep. And then human studies were done where the humans were woken up every time they reached REM sleep. So every time they reached their processing, their dream stage of sleep, they would be woken up, and these humans would then end up with hallucinations during the day when they were awake. So it shows that not only do we need sleep, we need dreams. If we don't dream, we hallucinate because our brain needs that processing time.
It's crazy.
It's amazing.
And sleep deprivation is linked with a whole host of other sorts of conditions as well, like heart disease, high blood pressure, diabetes, mental health issues like depression and anxiety. It's also like if you don't, obviously people know that if you don't get enough sleep, you can't think clearly in the next day. And I know, like, when I'm working with my patients who are teenagers and students and things like that, I say to them, getting a good night's sleep is the most important thing that you can do in preparation for your exams. More like, so don't stay up and cram, because like they've done studies where they were sleep deprived, and these kids just weren't able to perform the tasks or recall the information, regardless of how much they'd prepared beforehand.
Yeah.
So you have to get that sleep, and high school students and teenagers do have a higher requirement for sleep as well.
They do, and the problem now with talking to my teenage patients is that they're all on their phones and on these chat things until midnight.
Yeah.
And this seems to be the norm. So because everyone's on there talking, well, they don't want to be the one missing out. And so it's really important to try and educate teenagers, I think, on the importance of sleep and how much they do need, because now technology is getting in the way. And I guess that's for a lot of us. Technology is getting in the way of our sleep.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, like, when you're lying there and then you get this buzz of a notification if you're keeping your phone nearby, and you get this stress response and it wakes you up again.
Yep.
So it's not good to keep your phone by your bedside. Don't do that.
No, my phone, I mean, I miss calls during the day because my phone, when it's on silent, I've turned all vibrate off. So I know nothing happens when I'm asleep. Nothing disturbs me because I have it all completely dead.
You can get a little thing on your phone that will actually, it's like a do not disturb or something along those lines. I know on my iPhone it has that, and so you can set it so that if someone calls more than 3 times, then it'll allow it through. And if you can put permitted people on there, like your husband or your mum or something like that, or your children, so that, like, if they call you, you know that they're not calling you just to have a random chat because they're staying up night. They're calling you because they're like, help me, or something.
Yes. Yeah, that's good, isn't it? For parents that their kids, maybe they've got teenagers who are out at night time, so then they can still get their calls.
Yeah, but then it doesn't vibrate or anything like that, and you don't get any of the notifications from your apps and that sort of junk.
Yeah, that's a good tip.
And one of the other things that sleep deprivation can do as well is that it can make you more inflamed. So you're getting this chronic low-grade inflammation, and so, like you were saying as well with the rat studies, the effect of the white blood cells as well. So there's that. But your chronic inflammation can also be affecting your gut flora. And anyone who's been listening to these podcasts knows that your gut flora is super, super important.
Yeah.
And we need to have a healthy level balance of that in order to be healthy everywhere else.
Exactly. The center of all health.
Yeah. So why then are all these people having sleep issues? There's so many things that are happening that's affecting our sleep. So I know, like, one of the major things that's affecting it is light, and this can actually be in the form of natural light. So in the case of shift workers, this can work against you, but most commonly the form of light that's actually affecting our health is artificial light, or like indoor light. And so there's many people that are just watching TV, or they're playing on their phones or their iPad to try and make themselves sleepy, but really it's having the opposite effect, and then that will actually affect how deeply you sleep. So it may not necessarily affect the hours that you sleep, but like we were talking about before, it affects that stage of restorative sleep that you can get to. So what's happening is that, so the light's transmitted through our eyes, and then where that goes through to make the sleep hormone melatonin, and then the signals that the light sends then talk to our body's master clock, which is what affects our body's circadian rhythms. And all the cells in our body get in sync with this rhythm, and it can affect our hormones, our metabolism, our body temperature. But like all light can have an impact, but in particular blue light is the most problematic because of the effect that has on our sleep cycles. So sunlight is really strong. Like I said, this can work against you if you're a shift worker, but we can use it to our advantage to help with our sleep by getting outside for a couple of minutes, like 20 minutes or 15 minutes in the morning. I go for a walk at that time, and that will actually help to set up our body clock for the rest of the day. And it works more effectively if you're physically active while you're doing that.
Yeah. Good tip.
Yeah.
Other things, I guess, that affect the sleep quality, so noise as well. So we want to try and be in a quiet environment or a ambient noise. You know, some people like to sleep to the sound of waves or white noise or whatever it is, but it should be just consistently the same kind of noise. Or if you know, people get used to living next to a highway, that's a bit different. But if it was a highway and then bang, then that's not going to be great.
Yep. Stress response.
Yeah. Temperature of the bedroom as well. The ideal temperature for your sleeping environment is 18 degrees. So we shouldn't have it too hot or too cold. And I find a lot of people overdress for bed. So I think that's quite a big problem when it comes to sleep quality. People wearing flannelette pajamas and socks, and then they're big doonas and just getting too hot. I used to do it too when I was younger, but now I wear summer pajamas to bed all year long, and I sleep a lot better. So sleeping in darkness with block-out blinds. If you're sleeping in the daytime, they block out the light, or eye masks are really good for keeping it a nice dark environment so that you don't get exposed the hormones messing up your sleep pattern.
Yeah, because the sunlight is just the most powerful effect on your melatonin levels, more so than your indoor light. Yeah, definitely. That's a good tip. What about electric blankets? They're kind of bad for your sleep, aren't they?
Yeah, I'm so anti-electric blankets. I take a heat week just to, you know, if I've got cold feet, I'll have a heat week as I go to sleep, and it's just warm, and then I get to sleep and I'm fine. But electric blankets, the idea of an electric current running through your bed just freaks me out. And you get so warm. Like, have you ever woken up at 4 o'clock in the morning and you're just boiling hot?
I had an electric blanket when I was when I was living with my parents, and I remember waking up at one point and I was hallucinating because I was so hot. I thought that dinosaurs had come into my bedroom. And I was like, never again. Anti-electric
blankets.
Because they do recommend that you turn it off before you actually fall asleep.
Yep.
But there's a lot of people out there that are not doing that. And the fire hazard associated with it as well is a little bit scary.
Yeah, absolutely.
Speaking of the electrical current issue, and that's a whole other topic, but what people can get as well is earthing sheets, where you actually plug it into the wall outlet but you have it turned off, and if it's a grounded outlet, that can help a lot of people, because if you're disconnected from that negative current, then you can become more inflamed, and it can affect your cortisol rhythms as well. So there's a little bit of research on it, not a huge amount, but it is still exciting. And I've experimented with my husband, who isn't a super duper sleeper, and a lot of patients as well, and they've all found that the earthing sheets and earthing mats and things like that can be really helpful.
Awesome. Yeah.
But just earthing during the day can still be helpful.
Yeah.
The other thing with the light as well is that it affects our dopamine signaling, and then that can have a flow-on effect on our stress hormones. Which can affect our predisposition to metabolic syndrome, so like getting insulin resistance and high cholesterol and weight gain and all of that as well. And so definitely you've got to have healthy stress levels. So if your cortisol levels are too high at night, or they're peaking too early in the morning, then this will affect your melatonin levels. And then also having high cortisol throughout the night will cause you to go to the toilet more. So while it could also just be the timing of your fluid intake, you don't want to drink too much before bed, then if you're really stressed, then the aldosterone will cause you to wake up to go to the toilet more.